minutes in progress then. Sorry, my cat just knocked over a thing.
Let's everybody mute while we get started, unless you're.
Has everybody had an opportunity to review the minutes yet? Yes, 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 yes. Is there a motion for approval of minutes or any corrections?
I have some corrections on there. Let me pull them up. Hold on. It had to do with the views development. And I think it was on, it's in under the new business 5.1, it's paragraph 3. Kind of that third sentence there, and it mentions my name. And I think, as I recall, what Shelley said to us was that initially park land dedication is calculated based on the allocation of the zone. And she's, as I recall, and you guys can, remind me, she said it really, they hadn't come to a situation where something got, reallocated to a different higher density zone in a planned development, and whether or not that higher density would actually take precedence over what was originally zoned. She kind of implied that it would be what the actual original zone was rather than what the actual proposed densities were.
Kathleen, did you look at the staff report? Because Shelley replied to the question about that.
Is the staff report part of the meeting minutes or the file she sent?
It's down. It's both the files I sent and then I followed up with the packet, so it's in both places.
Okay.
Well, I think the important part though is we got to deal with the meeting minutes from what was said at the meeting
Right.
Last month, not what's in this month's packet.
Right. Okay.
Right.
And so
what Shelley said was she didn't know. If you go back and listen to the recording.
What did she say? She didn't know?
She needed to research it.
Okay.
Okay, so then if that's the case, what I would say is, under the Kathleen Walker comment, I would say the density should be determined based on, or the calculations of parkland dedication should be determined based on what the densities are that are proposed.
Is that in place of the sentence with like clarification on what is proposed and how many units?
Well, it says Sarah Richardson reminded the board they had a question about how the parkland dedication was going to be calculated. And then it says Kathleen Walker, comma, yes, the density will determine what the calculations will be. And I think what I said, or what I meant to say, was that the density, the dedication should be based on what the density actually is, proposed, not what original zoning there was.
Okay, so going to the minutes, where do you want that to read?
Okay, where it says my name, after the comma, put yes, or just say, the density, say the acreage of land dedicated should be based on what the densities actually are.
You got that, Sarah?
Yep.
Thank you.
What, Michael?
Well, I'm okay.
Okay, any other corrections or changes?
I don't know. I would like, I'm pretty sure I said it, the confusion, all this confusion and question asking for all these variances is just a result of the plan unit development word code in the planning code, and it's kind of, this is not the first and it won't be the last issues we have with the plan unit developments because it's so open-ended for interpretation. But
Is that a reference to a change to the minutes, Makoto?
yeah, I asked if this was a planned unit development, a PUD. And it says plan development, which is kind of vague as well.
Right. We're going to insert the word unit.
They're called planned developments now. I think they've taken out that planned unit development.
Okay. And Makoto, what was the continuation of that sentence that you wanted?
I would have to go back and watch, but I thought I mentioned that that's the reason there's all this confusion about variances and whatnot is because it's a PUD.
Okay. So Sarah, did you want to make a notation in there?
Yeah, I'll listen to it again, but I listened to it twice. I'm not sure you went into that detail, but I'll double check.
Thank you.
Anything else? Not seeing anything. Is there a motion to adopt as amended?
I make a motion that we adopt the Parks and Trail meeting notes as amended.
Is there a second?
Second that.
Makoto seconded. Kathleen moved. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Don't see any. Minutes approved. Look at that. We are cruising tonight. Sorry, I'm working with another screen trying to coordinate running the meeting and the agenda. Next item under old business 6.1, Bull Run Terrace final staff report November 12th. Sarah, do you want to introduce the topic for us? Sarah?
Yeah, okay, sorry, I was just getting myself to that same spot. So in the June and July minutes, the board reviewed the development proposal for Bull Run Terrace, and basically in a nutshell, you had a lot of questions about the density. You did not make a formal recommendation, but the development has been approved by the Planning Commission and it's going to council to recommend approval. So this is the board's opportunity to either make a recommendation or send some notes or make a recommendation with conditions or something along those lines. But this is your opportunity to send something to council when that packet goes. So I just want to be sure you didn't miss that opportunity. Tracy's here tonight to answer additional questions. But if you look at that staff report, it talks a little bit more about how the density will be calculated and what will happen if density is exceeded and when it goes to fee and lieu. So if you haven't had a chance to look at that, if you could read through it for a moment before you start your discussion, and then Tracy is here if you have additional questions.
Good job.
Thanks.
Does anybody have any questions? Does anybody want to take a moment to read through the staff report again?
Yes, please.
Okay, go ahead. I'd ask Sarah to be sure and attach all the minutes, copies of the sections of the minutes where we discussed the Bull Run Terrace, so that you wouldn't have to thumb through and try and find different minutes, locations, or things like that. That it's readily available.
So I have a question. Is there a proposal like in stone now? Like, do we have all the information, or is it still kind of up in the air?
Well, I think that'd be a good Tracy question to ask and have him walk through us a little bit about where they're at with it now. I would assume that since it's already gone through the Planning Commission, that all the details are pretty well nailed down. Is that not correct, Tracy?
Yeah, I mean, that's correct. I mean, at this point, it did go through the 2 hearings of the Plan Commission, and they made a recommendation to forward it onto the council. So it is, set in stone as that regard, in that regard. As
Well,
far
really,
as things are, things, I guess, set in stone is a relative term, but
I think one of the things that I'd be curious about as far as having discussion tonight, one of the things I think that we have an opportunity to impact, it's really the question of, do we want to work with the project developer as far as doing a phase 1 development on the park in exchange for the required fees associated with the project. So whether it's SDCs or fee in lieu, do we want to commit to having the developer begin the first phase development? And if the answer to that is yes, by what process do we want to work with the developer to come up with the finalized plan so that it meets the needs of the community and our needs as the Parks and Trails Advisory Board? If the answer is no to that, then what we need to do is make that recommendation and simply accept the SDCs or fees in lieu. Is that correct, Sarah?
yeah, I guess I'll just clarify on that. The fee in lieu, the developer is proposing to dedicate parkland. So, based on the density
Right.
calculation, there would be no fee in lieu if the number of units, go under the amount of parkland proposed to be dedicated. But, I did talk to the developer again, just to confirm, I called them because we've been, offering that idea of, helping to construct the park. And I called them last week just to, kind of touch base that, okay, is that still something they're interested? I don't want to, present that as an option. Certainly it'll be the council's decision and details and a contract and all that stuff. But
Right.
and they confirmed that, yeah, I mean, I think they feel like it's a win-win. So it's still kind of on the table in that regard. It's up to
So
you
what
guys.
I kind of wanted to kind of clarify, and I made the point at the Planning Commission meeting, was that my understanding, well, there's 2 things I'd like to clarify. The first thing is process, and that is that I thought we were kind of waiting to get more information about densities and all that before we sent a memo or whatever as to what our findings were. I think we talked about it. That was my understanding of where we were at, was that there wasn't any, we were waiting for more information on densities. And we kind of never got that, and it went to the Parks Board, or to the Planning Commission, excuse me. And then there was, I think, some things buried in the 700 pages of the Planning Commission packet. But I think all it was kind of meeting minutes notes. And usually in the past, we have kind of gone on the record with these developments of kind of saying what our, findings or proposal or, final recommendation is. There was a formal recommendation made to the Planning Commission, or to the staff at least, that was passed on to the Planning Commission. So the first thing there was just process, and just, making sure, and I think Shelley's kind of new to it. She didn't maybe understand all the process in the past. So that's just kind of clarifying the process, that when we have these developments and we do have a recommendation to make, then we go ahead and document that in some sort of a memo for the planning staff in the file. But the second thing had to do with, and this is where we're kind of starting to set precedents here, at least, that I'm aware of, where we have these developments coming in where zone changes are proposed, and yet the specifics, details of what the development is going to be with this zone change is not clear. And so we really don't know what the densities are going to be, or how many. And of course, our parkland dedication is based on knowing how many units of which kind and all that. And so in the case of Bull Run Terrace, the parkland dedication was and this is where I guess I would have to, just check in, but my understanding is the parkland dedication was based on the residential zones only, and yet like a third, I don't know, 3 acres or something of that parcel is proposed to be commercial. And in the commercial zone, you're allowed to have as many units, residential units, as you are in the high density. And so that tends to change things when, again, kind of not knowing what's going to get developed, you kind of have to assume it could be the, either the minimum density or the maximum density. You can assume either one. And so in the case of this Bull Run Terrace, looking at the math, the proposed parkland dedication is 1.426 acres. If you're just looking at the dedication for the residential property, that's 1.32 acres. And so yes, there's about a 1.11 overage in the actual acreage proposed for parkland dedication. But if you actually include the acreage for the commercial land, even on a minimum, it would be 1.63 acres. And if you assume the maximum density able to be built on the commercial, it would be 1.9 acres. So, and I'm going to assume the worst case scenario here just for illustration purposes, but, that's another half an acre of parkland. And so, when you're looking at having, 200 and some odd units, then having another half acre is helpful. And I'm not saying that, we should or should not kind of move forward with whatever's been proposed here at Bull Run Terrace. I'm just kind of pointing out because this is, we've kind of got similar situations with the view as far as zone changes and unknown numbers of, units being proposed and all that, and trying to kind of figure out a process going forward, how we want to work with, some, I don't want to say unknowns, but some, less than nailed down numbers of units that are going to be proposed. Because, once you decide to accept 1.4 acres or whatever, and they end up building, another, I don't know, I forget how many, I can tell you how many units it would take if they fully developed out the commercial. It would be, it could be 36 to 72 units.
Well, actually, can I just interject there? So in the commercial, there's no required minimum density. It could be all commercial. There could be no residential whatsoever.
That's right.
If
You're right.
residential is developed, see, there is a bit of uncertainty in that regard. So so what we're proposing is more parkland than the properties that are known to have the residential or residentially zoned than is being, then would be required. So there's an overage of, like what you mentioned. I think I didn't know we were talking about this tonight, so I didn't really look at all the details. I was kind of expecting to talk about the other thing, but 0.13 acres or something like that. I think is that you had the number there, Kathleen.
Yes, 0.11 acres is existing
So
overage.
There's overage.
Yeah.
So I thought the staff report, if you look at the staff recommendation, they're saying, if there is no residential on that commercial, you just dedicated more than you had to. We're not going to whittle it back, which is fine to the developer. But if you do develop some residential on that commercial, then you can develop up to, what is it, like 11 units or something like that, and then
It's
meet the number.
13,
and then if it goes
13.
13 units,
Mhm.
and then if it goes beyond that, then that bridge would be crossed of there may be more dedication or pay the fee in lieu of. So we're kind of looking at, since we don't know what's going to happen on that, we're willing to deal with that at the time it's developed. And, there could be more land that needs to be dedicated at that time, or the option of paying the fee in lieu of. But no case with the amount of parkland be reduced based on the actual unit count.
And I think,
Yeah,
I think it's important the board, you know, recognizes that this has gone through the planning commission, it's going to council. You know, if you want to weigh in, you have a couple options. You can make a recommendation or you can send some notes with your concerns, but it's going to go to council, and I want to be sure you have something to forward to them.
well, it's actually 36 I'm not sure where she's getting the 13 units because there's like, you know,
13 units is so the area, the amount of area of parkland proposed to be dedicated greater than what is calculated based on the residentially zoned property comes out to, I think, 13 units. I don't have the staff report in front of me, but it was either 11 or 13.
Yeah, that's
Well,
how I interpreted what Sarah said.
It's
Yeah.
my
13.
understanding though is that there's 3.61 acres of commercial, right?
Yeah, there probably is, but this doesn't calculate anything on the commercial. It's
Well,
only
that's my point.
calculating.
Yeah. Yeah, my point is that, again, you know, I get it that if there's nothing developed on there, then we're in an overage situation. But that's a big if. And my understanding is that, you know, so the point of this is that if you want to assume no residential on that commercial, then we're fine. But my concern is that there's actually on that commercial of 3.6 acres, there's 36 to 72 units that can be built there. You know, minimum of 36 and a maximum, well, a minimum of 0, I
There is no
suppose,
minimum.
but under the
Right.
existing density, you know, anything a minimum of 0, but a high of 72. So having 72 more units, again, then gets you another half acre of parkland. And so that's my point is that, you know, to assume that no residential will be developed on the commercial is, you know, something you can assume, but it's not, you know, but if they end up developing 72 units there, then, you know, that's
At that
kind of-
time, then you would weigh in again, and you could say, well, we would like additional dedication, or we would like to collect the fee in lieu of.
Tracy, is the developer going to be entering into a development agreement with the city on this?
I mean, most likely, most developments require that just because there's, you know, public improvements and roads and all that kind of stuff. You know,
So we could make a recommendation then, if it moves forward, that the way I read this staff report that Sarah provided was that you're going to be dedicating 0.11 acres greater than what you would be necessarily required to do, which would be the equivalent of 13 dwelling units on that commercial property. Beginning with
Right.
the 14th developed unit, then either we could have a choice of either additional property or fees in lieu. Is that not correct?
yeah, that's the way it's set up right
so
now.
if we entered into a development agreement, if the city were to enter into a development agreement that did a couple of things, and this is kind of based on reading some of the previous minutes from this board, and bear with me, guys, I know I'm kind of long-winded on this, but if we could enter into a development agreement that said, number one, we'd be happy to work with the developer to make preliminary developments on your phase 1 developments that would include grading and half-street improvements and whatever else we could get for that, based on up to 13 units and the additional 0.11 acres. Anything beyond that, we would want to discuss whether or not it becomes land or fee in lieu. Would you be comfortable with that type of communication, Kathleen?
Yeah, and I is it possible to actually get more land later? You know, I mean, I'm assuming that the residential is going to develop first, and I'm not sure, you know, luckily the commercial does meet up with the parkland. So you can see, I suppose you could kind of, you know, negotiate something else later there. But yeah, and I'm not saying that we should go one way or the other. I'm just kind of bringing up the fact that, you know, when we have these things where, you know, we just don't know, it's kind of, I think that's a good way to approach it, is to put something like that in a development agreement. I think that kind of gives us a little flexibility.
Well, if we're going to use, does that me doing all the feedback? I'm sorry. If we're going to use the developer is building out the beginnings of phase one, which I believe makes a lot of sense. Get some immediate improvements for the developer to show to his clients and helps the neighborhood, and it saves us mobilization costs. It makes sense to me to be able to do that. To do that, however, I wouldn't be comfortable unless we have a formal development agreement through the city that states what all the expectations are with that. So I would be comfortable working with Sarah to draft, if the board is in agreement with that, I'd be comfortable working with Sarah to draft up a letter stating that fact.
Yes, I agree.
I support that.
So do I.
Susan?
Well, I had a head nod. I guess I have to, no, I did. Yes, I'm fine. Thank you.
And Tracy, I'm asking your opinion, because we haven't done any formal vote on this yet. I just want to make sure everybody was in agreement before we make a motion. Tracy, is that something that you think that the developer would be amenable to?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what we're proposing to, I guess,
Well,
the details of when the parks plan is done and those kind of things. So, I think Sarah, I mean, they're working on the parks plan for that specific park, correct? And also I saw that, I gave some input as a citizen, they're soliciting input. And so I'm assuming that will be kind of collated, and then that more of a final design will be developed. So, I think the timing of all that could work out very good for the developer to do, some of the grading or rough improvements. So this is a separate pot of money than the parks fee in lieu of. It's SDCs, as units are built, those SDCs generate funds. And the idea is that work that they would be doing to improve the park would be credits toward those SDCs.
correct.
But yeah, no, I think they're definitely amenable to that.
Okay, I'd like to take credit for that, but that's okay. Is there, anybody want to make a motion to that effect?
Yes.
I'll make the motion. I move that we move forward with Don developing a memo that references a development agreement, to include in a development agreement clarification on what happens if residential units beyond 13 units are developed on the commercial property. And that the reference to that would be that the city would be able to decide whether we wanted additional acreage or fee in lieu of. Is that accurate, Don?
I think so.
Okay.
Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, any discussion on the motion?
Hey, Don, do you think you can draft that by Monday?
I think I'm emotionally prepared to do that tomorrow.
Do you mind if I just did, and I it's your board, obviously. I didn't hear in that motion, Kathleen, the idea of the development agreement would kind of look at the cooperative arrangement of the developer potentially doing improvements for SDC credits. I mean, I don't know if that's part of what you wanted to say or not, but.
Yeah, that's something that Don would be adding in. I guess I'm fine with amending the motion to add in the section that we would be crediting development of the park using SDCs to the developer, but just kind of clarifying, what they're going to do and how much the SDC credits are and all that. Those usually get worked out.
Yeah.
So, yep, I amended that to include that. Thanks for adding that, Tracy.
Makota, did you second that?
Susan,
Susan seconded that. Susan, are you comfortable with that amendment?
Yes.
Yes, okay. In that case, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Great, motion carries. I'll work on that tomorrow. I'll give you a call, Sarah, and I'll dash something off and then give you a holler and let you know it's on the way.
Thanks, Don.
Okay. Next on the agenda. Tracy, don't go away because I think you're also here for this part too, right?
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah, I can't get away that easy. Okay, the views. Sarah, would you like to introduce the topic for us?
Yeah. So the board discussed this in the September and October meetings, and also had questions about density and parkland dedication. If you look at the staff report, there's some follow-up information about that. And Tracy has also, I forwarded last night or yesterday, Tracy sent me the updated plan for the development, and this is a planned development. And it is going to be going before the Planning Commission on November 23rd. So I also encourage the board to make a recommendation or provide notes for the packet going to the Planning Commission.
And just to clarify, I see a number dealing with fees in lieu. 472,000 if those are paid up front. And if we defer it, now is that our choice or is that the developer's choice to defer?
I think it's our choice. Tracy, is that right?
Yeah, I mean, the way it's set up is at the city's choice, whether to collect the fee in lieu of or acquire the land. I guess one thing I'd mention in this is the developer is proposing all of the amenities, you know, as part of the planned development. They want to do all of the amenities as private facilities. So these would be private open space, private park land.
Yeah.
You know, they're proposing, and I can share I've got the sketch that I sent to Sarah a couple days ago, if you want me to just kind of go over it a little bit.
That'd be great.
I think that'd be nice,
Okay.
but I want to clarify while you're loading that up. I'm going to yammer on for just a minute. So I had already made that assumption that it would be privately owned or privately operated.
Okay.
It'd be for those individuals that buy into that subdivision and live there and enjoy those facilities. However, that does not take you off the hook for systems development charges nor the fee in lieu in this case.
Yeah, no, and so that was a question, you know, I've posed to the developer, and they are well aware that they, you know, based on the unit count, they will be required to pay the fee in lieu of, and they're proposing this private parkland.
Okay,
You know,
that's
so
fine with
they
me.
have no qualms about that, you know, and because it is private, you know, the code is very clear that
Right.
because it's private, or it's because it isn't public, you can't collect, you know, as fee in lieu. It's not, you know, it's not dedicated and will not credit for fee in lieu of payment.
Right. Now, they're also obligated to systems development charges, correct?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
that's the same. That's kind of that separate pot. All, you know, all development would be required to pay the parks, SDC, and, you know, streets, sewer, water. Sarah, I'm blocked from sharing my screen. I don't know if that's something you can.
And can I add, I have a kind of important basic question. I was looking at the city development code again regarding planned unit developments, and it's under 17.64.00 for intent for planned unit developments. It's intended to refine and implement village development patterns designated B on the comprehensive plan map. It allows the relocation of zones within designated villages, blah, blah, blah. And so my understanding in reading this development code is that planned developments are supposed to happen within village zones. And this parcel, the view is actually all single family residential. It's not zoned as village. So how is it that we're allowed to be considering planned developments outside of village areas?
Yeah, I don't have the code in front of me, but I guess just historically, that intent section, that is the intent. It's not necessarily the rules per se. But that intent hasn't been followed. Salmon Creek Estates was a planned development. Actually, Hamilton Ridge was a planned development. What's the other? Tupper, that area where Tupper Road is, that was all planned development. So it has been used inside. I don't know if there is a planned development that I can think of in a village, to tell you the truth. But it can be used as a mechanism outside of villages, and it has been done that way.
Well, I'm trying to recall, most of, Salmon Creek Estates looks more like a single family residential subdivision, which it is. So, I'm not quite sure.
There are, as you go up that road, Auburn Street, I think it is, there are some attached row homes in there. And those were, kind of a product, I guess we'll say, that the developer integrated into that zone.
Yeah.
The way that Hamilton Ridge, I'm trying to, off of Sandy Heights there, and then there's also the Tupper Road one. Both of those were actually high density residential zoned, and the only way they could do the single family was through a planned development. And with one of the components of the planned development is that you have to dedicate up at least 25% of the land area in open space.
Let me ask you,
Were you
Tracy,
able to allow me to share my screen, Sarah? Can't hear you.
you're mute, Sarah.
All right, let me look into that, see if there's something I need to do.
It says, when I try to do it, it says host disabled.
Try that.
Can I ask a question while you're looking for that?
Yes, go ahead.
What's the deal with a private place? I mean, is it like a gated community? How do you keep people out?
Well,
Usually
you don't.
Managed.
It isn't gated. Actually, he does have some, we'll call them gates at the entrance to the lower views, but they're welded open. I don't know. He's wanting to kind of create something different in Sandy, to take advantage of the view, and that kind of amenity there, but it's not, we'll say, gated. And I don't know, you can't keep people out necessarily.
Yeah, oftentimes what I've seen in the past is it's just signed. They'll put signage up explaining that it's, homeowners association property.
Yeah, so it'll all be owned, eventually by the homeowner association, which will have, association fees that will maintain it. And I think he was feeling that he just wanted to kind of do this a notch above the typical, we'll say. And so if I was able to share it, I could show you some of the other, there we go.
Tracy,
does that mean-
I think that's working.
That means that the city crews are not responsible for
That is correct.
maintaining
Correct,
the
yeah.
park. They don't mow
The
or do
streets would still be public streets, but all of the amenities are proposed as private.
Wait, so Tracy, did you say that there is going to be HOA fees to maintain?
Oh yeah, there have to be.
So, okay, guys, in my experience, when it's a neighborhood like this, over the years, they might change and close the gates, and maybe up the HOAs or whatever. But so that's just a possibility down the
The
road.
thing is, they couldn't close those gates because those are public roads, and that's the way it would be platted as public roads. So that the gates, I don't know if you can see my hand on the screen.
We can.
Okay, so there's, you can't really see it, but right in this area, there are these kind of, we'll call them faux gates, because And, you know, it's just kind of creating an entrance, and there would be a entry signage, you know, to the views. But the reality is, because all these are public roads and there's a public alley, you know, they wouldn't be able to block it off. Anybody can go in there at any time, you know, it's like any other public road. So what they're showing here is, you know, in terms of park amenities, there's, you know, the whole property. So we're calling this the lower views and the upper views. And the lower views is about 23 acres total, and about 10 acres, 10.4 acres of that will be in either this open space or these other tracks. You know, in this area, there's some other amenities, kind of like a viewing plaza. And over here, you know, a little half court kind of thing. You know, they are showing a little bit of trail system in this. We were showing a little more extensive trail in the open space. And because the staff wanted the developer to, you know, develop a rigorous, you know, exact location of where the trails are going to be, and a grading plan and landscaping plan for all that, we decided to actually eliminate some of the trails in that area. And it was mainly a function of, it was going to, because, you know, trails like in this sort of area, it's not very easy for an engineer just to say, okay, here's where the trail should go. You really need to walk it, fine tune it, and, you know, meander it appropriately. And so we didn't want to get into a condition that required us to do that before we went to the city council, as the staff was recommending. So we just eliminated all trails within the restricted development area. You know, some other, I guess, amenities, and these aren't really parks, but they are amenities, kind of meandering sidewalks. There is a meandering sidewalk through here. And then in the upper views, there's an additional park area with a half court and play structure. And there's a showing as a dog park. And Sarah asked, you know, what the size of that was. I think it's about a half acre, somewhere in that ballpark, maybe a little bit less. You know, a little bit different topic than parks, just to kind of give you a little more of a picture of the development. They are proposing a kind of a decorative sand wall along the highway frontage. You know, you've probably all seen that property. Some of it sits above the highway there, pretty steep bank, but some of it comes down to grade, you know, kind of in this area, and then also in the west end. But to kind of mitigate some of that noise impact to the residents. And so the proposed sidewalk would be up here along the highway rather than down at the highway street level. That's kind of, I guess, the park amenities in a nutshell.
So my understanding is that if this was to develop under the existing zoning, I thought the intent of the planned unit development was to dedicate, 25% open space and all that, but what's being dedicated couldn't be developed anyway. It's the flood slope hazard overlay, heaps, steep, wet,
Well, that's what it is. That's what the
Right.
code. So there's actually in the code, there's two, so there's the 25% open space dedication requirement, which are, typically, in the case of Salmon Creek, it was the corridor along Tickle Creek. But the calculation of parkland is separate from that 25%. So that's why,
Right.
if we look at the amount of area that's actually, proposed in green space, it exceeds that 25% by quite a bit. Let's see, I could probably figure out the calculation here, but it's about 16 acres. So about half of the development. And is it
Right,
does it
but,
look
but
like
again,
half?
they wouldn't be able to develop that anyway under existing zoning, right?
Right. But that's
So,
what the code requires, and the plan development code requires 25% of the land area in open space. It does, so it's, the open space is defined as, slopes and wetlands or whatever. It's not defined as developable area.
right, but I guess my point is it sounds like the way, and I get the, we're trying to make this, that's getting pitched as something, cool and groovy, which is, in some ways it is. But my point is that if you were proposing this as under existing zoning, that would all show as open space anyway. So it's not like we're getting open space here because of this proposed zone. That would already be open space because it would not be able to be developed.
And
That's the
Kathleen
problem
might,
with plan unit developing coding, is that it's very vague. There's lots of loopholes, and as Kelly, the planning director, stated, like, it would take a long time to fix it.
I think one of the motivations, and I don't want to, pretend like I'm speaking on behalf of the developer, but my guess is that one of the things driving the motivation of keeping it within the HOA is so that they don't have to have the argument with us that all they're developing is, or all they're dedicating is open spaces, non-developable land. It's easier for them, I think, to keep it however they want it and to just pay the fees and move on with it, knowing that we aren't responsible for the maintenance, operations, or development of that property. And so basically we're going to be collecting fees on something that we won't have the obligation to service. My concern is that somewhere down the road, that HOA is going to get tired of paying for their insurance, get tired of paying for their maintenance, get tired of paying for, any liability issues that crop up. And at some point, they're going to be knocking at the city's door saying, we would like to go ahead and disband our HOA and dedicate all this parkland to the city.
Yep.
I think at that point is really where we have to be a little bit careful. And we have to have the ability to say no or yes with these conditions. And it may be something as simple as, making sure that all the playground equipment meets the city standards and codes, and make sure that the irrigation systems in the open areas meet city standard and code. But that's to me where the real danger is what's going to happen in 10 years, not what's going to happen in a year.
Right.
Until
And,
then,
in exchange for all that, they get to put, I don't know how many, I don't know how many single family residential units would fit on this property, which is what it was originally zoned for, compared to what, we've got apartments and all that. So do you have that number, Tracy? What the difference in total number of units are?
Just a second here. I have to look.
Larry, has this one gone
Printed
to the
out
planning
another
commission?
sheet, but I didn't print out that sheet.
It's going to the planning commission on the 23rd is what the staff November, no, is 25th?
23rd.
23rd.
I want it on record that this is one of the problems that comes up with PUDs, of many problems that needs to be looked at and fixed.
We'll be sure and include that comment in the minutes.
Mhm.
I want to stop sharing my screen here for a second.
Okay.
And that because of the topography of Sandy, that this is going to be an ongoing problem with high gradient land and land that's not buildable. Developers will just go to a PUD and then do this.
Do you have experience, Don, is part of your neighborhood in an HOA?
No.
Because there's an HOA over in Snowberry, I think.
Yeah, that may be, we don't have an HOA here.
I come from the land of HOAs in Belarus.
Does anybody else know much? You know, I see on Facebook, oh, you know, they were supposed to be cleaning our gutters or something, and I think it's in Snowberry. I guess, Sarah, it would be helpful to kind of know a little bit more about how, you know, where the HOAs are in Sandy right now and how those are operating. Because like what Don said, you know, our firsthand experience with this are things like Knollwood, where, you know, that was supposed to be the community park for that neighborhood, and we ended up with it. And, you know, I'm not saying that's a bad thing or whatever, but,
Right.
you know, going in with our eyes open as to how HOAs are already currently operating, you know, I'm not going to use Facebook as a basis for making a determination, but, you know, because the whiners and moaners, you know, are post on Facebook, but, you know, folks kind of, you know, whine a little bit about the HOA, you know, not getting things done. So I guess I'd like to kind of find, I don't know if there is a way to kind of find out, you know, overall how they do without, you know, because obviously if it's not going well, people are going to be speaking up. You may not get a completely balanced look at things, but just to know how the HOAs are so far with what we have.
Is there
I
any
can-
legislation pertaining to how HOAs are formed and how that?
Yeah, there are all kinds of ORSs, Oregon Revised Statutes, that, you know, in the land use laws that deal with what can and can't happen as far as an HOA goes and how they're formed. You know, and I've had experience with HOAs, more not as a resident of one, but as a city official that have had to deal with them, either through inquiries of bringing them into the city park system or, you know, administering adjacent to them. For instance, when I was in Gresham, we had Mossy Tree Park, which was part of an HOA, which was signed, you know, private property, and yet it was a park and people would go into it assuming it was a public park. And then as the parks director there, I'd get called a lot in Gresham saying, hey, I just got kicked out of Mossy Tree Park. And I'd have to explain, well, that's private property. That's not a city park, and one thing or another. But, you know, there are pros and cons to it. I know some HOAs work great. I know some HOAs don't work so well. I know that a lot of it is really kind of based on what the leadership looks like as a part of the HOA. You know, they form their own leadership groups. They have their own bylaws. They have their regular meetings. They pay their fees, one thing or another. And the ones that work well have strong leadership groups, and the ones that don't. And so it's just one of those things. But, you know, my experience has been sooner or later, a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them will come back to a city and say, hey, we're interested in dissolving our HOA.
When there's like a big assessment, when some like half the neighborhood needs re-roofed or something.
Well, and each HOA is a little bit different. Some of them deal with right down to landscaping. Some of them don't. Some of them are much more general than that. Some of them deal with, if it's a private road, street maintenance. If it's, again, private roads, street lights. In this case, private park. They'll have to deal with all the maintenance associated with that and the development of it. So it really depends on each one and how that leadership is structured.
And conceivably, we will have a city park near this. You know, there's a park identified near this parcel that, you know, will eventually get developed with facilities and all that. So we'll already have that to maintain. So inheriting more can, you know, I don't know if there's any way to then, you know, before we, you know, to kind of, I don't know, you know, these development agreements, we keep coming back to development agreements or something, but to somehow, you know, put some clause in there that, if the HOA goes away and the city ends up having to deal with it, just, what, do we get paid? Do we get, some sort of,
Compensation. One could argue,
To set up a
if I were
bond.
the developer,
Side.
I guess if I were the developer, I'd be arguing that I'm still paying my systems development charges. I'm still paying my fees in lieu of, I have paid my equivalent of full freight. And
to the
therefore,
part that we're building over here near you, that's probably getting used by all your visitors, and, that we're actually already paying to maintain and all. Yeah.
yes, but they're still paying and buying into that park.
Tracy,
Into
why
the
don't they
city
want
part.
to put a fence up and have it be gated? I don't understand. Not on Vista Loop, like not enclosed Vista Loop, but the two different properties.
I mean, then they would be private streets, I guess, is one reason. Then the HOA would need to maintain those as well. So it ups the cost big time. And, I'm not sure. I haven't asked them that question exactly, but my sense is, I don't know if Sandy is quite ready for that level of, whatever uppityness, or I don't know, whatever the word is, exclusiveness. So they're wanting to kind of find the happy medium between that kind of product and just a regular old subdivision, we'll say. So to answer the question about density, based on the area, the minimum density is 63 units and the maximum is 159, and they're proposing 168. So it looks like 9 units more than the maximum density, which would be allowed on the zone itself.
Does that take into effect, does that include the subtracting out the flood slope hazard property?
Yeah, you can. Yeah, so the calculation is taking that out. You can actually increase the density. You can transfer some of the density that you're losing in that restricted area to the buildable area. So basically the calculation is, you kind of take out the roads and streets to come up with your net area and times that. So in this case, it's about 27 acres and times 5.8, which is the maximum density, and that comes up with 159 units. And then the code says there's the other way of calculating it, which is more of the gross area, and then by transferring density out of the restricted development area. And by doing that, you actually come up with 183 units. But then the code says the lesser of those two calculations. So first case, 159, by transferring all the density out of the restricted, because there's quite a bit of, restricted area there, it would be 183. So you can't transfer all that density. So yeah, it looks like about 9 units more than would be otherwise allowed in the zone.
So just to be clear, you're telling me that the area that's not flood slope hazard minus the roads times 5.8 units per acre is getting you 150 some odd houses?
No, what I'm saying is the net area just minus the roads.
So you're still getting, so you're taking the 5.8 units per acre on that you cannot build on the flood slope hazard and putting it on, so you're basically turning single family residential into something much higher density. Anyway, this
that's
is
why the code
parks
has two calculations. That's why the code has two calculations. Let's see, let me just verify.
Well, I don't want to take us out of the parks discussion, so I'll save it for a different day.
Yeah, I think we need to stick with.
Yep.
In about a month and a half.
Okay, so any other questions? How does the board want to proceed with this? We want to make a recommendation. Staff recommends that we recommend the fee in lieu for the Views property. That we accept basically that we do nothing and allow this to proceed and accept the SDCs and the fees in lieu. And that's really what our play is, unless we want to try to fight with it at the planning commission.
I mean,
And honestly, I don't see the fight for us.
it is what it is.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing either. I think that when you have a PUD that wants to stay private, as long as they're paying and not expecting to get a break on their fee in lieu or on their SDCs, I really don't think we have a dog in the fight.
It's the problem with PUDs.
Until the owner dumps the dog on our doorstep.
Well, yeah,
We inherit the dog.
yeah.
So,
Maybe suggest something like having an account or a bond or something that, in case that happens.
Yeah, I don't know how to incorporate that language, but I don't disagree with it. In fact, I said something to the effect in the minutes that there should be some kind of a city statement, and that, you know, the city won't consider accepting any donated land from this development for the next 10 years or 15 years or whatever the case may be.
I mean,
go ahead. Go ahead.
I just suggest a bond and some kind of account that is there just in case the you know, the community board goes under and then they want us to take it. They want the city to pay for all this stuff. And that's what I suggest.
I have one more question, I guess. I go back. You all talked about the trails on this, and seemed to imply that this was so something about the staff was making them come up with, you know, engineered drawings for the trails or something.
Mhm.
Am I getting that right, Tracy?
Yeah, basically, they wanted a lot more details in terms of the trail alignment and
Mhm.
you know, what they call a native vegetation report and replanting plan. And, you know, it was like, you know, we looked at it and said, hey, well, that is a lot of detail at this stage. And so they just decided to,
Mhm.
you know, the fallback was, okay, we're not going to propose any trails. I don't know. It was kind of
Yeah. That's a kind of an important one for me, because, you know, a lot of this stuff, you know, like the apartments, the little playground at the apartments, that's required under the existing code, you know, not even the planned unit development. So, but the trails were something I guess I was very, of course, interested in. And it is part of our trail. I believe, you know, something similar to that alignment is in our Parks and Trails Master Plan as a proposed trail. And so, and also, I guess my question first off is, if that trail was back on the docket again, is that open to the public?
No.
I guess it's depends how it's set up. You know, if it's a trail that's in the master plan, you know, we'll say, you know, theoretically it could require an easement, public access easement across it. But if it's not in the master plan, and then, you know, it's up to the developer if they want it to be private or not. Because it isn't a required, you know, city facility, we'll say, but.
Mm-hmm. Well, from where I sit, it really is important to, I think, the public to have that as a trail easement for the public. It's also important, I think, for it to be included as part of this proposal, because, you know, and I don't agree with the staff that they have to have engineered drawings. That wasn't something that was required of us when we were building Tickle Creek and all. So
I know.
I don't, I get it's different, but I think there's also, there's something that the city could kind of work with them a little bit on some engineered, the typicals that we use. I mean, that's what we use in a trail contract is typical, side views of what the trail would look like. And with the map you have of kind of the rough alignment, it's a conceptual drawing. It may go, some up and some down. But I would feel comfortable having a conceptual location for the trail and some, standard engineered as-built or standard engineer, what's the word I think just used, the typicals, and then, working out all the details, later on. That would, having all that would help me feel better about this whole proposal. Like that whole idea that what's in this for the rest of the city residents here? What's in it for Sandy? I mean, obviously there's something to benefit the actual people that buy the view lots there and all, but what's in it for the rest of the residents? And so having that trail connection open to the public that we can then link it up, and continue it on further east over possibly, over towards the Cedar Ridge property or something like that would be something that's, a positive, outstanding, or whatever the word is in the city code, I guess. I'd like to see that happen as part of this project.
I want to just quickly clarify, they weren't asking for engineered drawings, so that's probably a level above what they were asking for. They were asking for, a more detailed trail alignment and a grading plan to show how these trails would, be graded, and also a landscaping plan to restore the area impacts of this trail. And we felt it was just kind of premature at this stage. It wasn't the level of engineering drawings, but it was kind of more than the developer really wanted to do at this stage. And they were requesting this, before it even went to the planning commission. It was like, well, I don't know. So, I mean, I could see certainly that information would be appropriate as it's being constructed, but not at the preliminary, approval stage, we'll say. But anyway.
They're going through a geological hazard area or something. I could see wanting that information, but
yeah,
I don't, I don't, it seems like a little bit of overkill to me also.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is if you go out there and you look over that edge, there's a lot of blackberries down in there. And so they were just kind of seeing that, to figure out where a trail is going to be, you're going to actually have to create impact.
Yeah.
And then the city's wanting you to minimize impact and wanting you to, mitigate for that impact. It's like a endless chore at this stage of the game, we'll say.
Yeah. And getting to your point, Kathleen, again, I hate to say it, but I think that what the city is getting out of this, or what the citizens are getting out of it, is just money. Unless there is something in the transportation plan or the trails plan that specifically identifies that as a regional trail, I don't know how you could hold the developers' feet to the fire on that. They're paying their fees in lieu, they're paying their STCs like anybody else. They don't have an expectation that we'll build them anything. It's private property basically. So unless we get some kind of trail easement from them, or can force it through, an action because of the master plan, I only see money coming at us, not as far as the primary benefit for the citizens.
Well, the plan unit development does talk pretty extensively about having trails in it. And so, sidewalks aren't the trails. And I think that I agree with Tracy and your perception on what should be required. I don't, aligning the trail and, having a grading plan and a, restoration plan, revegetation and all that is all stuff that gets done after much later in the process than this. And that's something that a trail planner could give you,
Yes.
and do that work for you. I guess, as the Parks and Trails Master Plan, given that we may end up with this adopted dog at some time, it's a nice dog, it's a very high quality dog, but nevertheless, if we end up adopting we are taking a risk by, doing this, and the fact that we may end up owning or being responsible for all this. I think if that's on the docket, then having something else on there that the city gets now, again, having these trails be part of the plan and having a public easement across those trails would be worth the risk that we may end up with having to maintain the rest of it at some point in the future.
Okay. How do we craft that message?
I would make a motion that we consider consider not requiring the grading plan and all those detailed plans, and just go with a more conceptual alignment, and all those other plans to be developed at some later date after approval. Number one, and number two, that the conceptual layout of the trails be included in the plan, with the identification of those as public trails open to the public easement on those, that a public easement be given to the city for those.
Okay.
Because the sidewalks are all public, aren't they?
If it's a public street, I would assume it's a public
Yeah.
sidewalk.
Right. Well, I'm kind of, using the same analogy there, that that trail alignment should be public.
Yeah,
What do you think they might say about that, Tracy? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I guess it would probably kind of depend where. Let me just share the screen again real quick here. Let's see, maybe I got rid of that thing that I was sharing. Let's see. Yeah, I got rid of it. But I mean, I believe there is. Does anybody have that plan? I believe there is a trail kind of going off to the east there that's shown on the plan. Isn't that right?
Yes, and it goes off to the west also.
Yeah. So on this latest plan that Sarah just sent, is that correct? Because we took off some of the trails that go down into the larger area there. Let me see if I can find that.
Well, there's an intersection right near the current boundary, and there's trails in the woods down there.
Okay, I'm gonna.
I guess my concern then, if I paraphrase you a little bit, Kathleen, what I'm hearing you say is that our concern is that we have a regional trail designated that goes through this property. We don't want to have a trail that starts or ends at their property line and then begins at the other side of their property line, so that we have this off-limits section right in the middle of it.
Right.
Bisecting our trail. We want to make sure that if we're, linking their trail to our trail, we want to make sure that it is available for public use.
So they are showing this. Can you see the screen there? They are showing this trail here.
But see, I'm looking at this trail there.
Right here.
There, and then how it's kind of continuing over here, and then see where it says forested area up at the top,
Right
and
here.
that big black arrow.
Well,
Keep
see
going,
all that.
Keep going north and see those trails off where there's not the olive green overlay there. All that
those aren't
stuff.
trails. Those aren't trails. Those are contour lines, or restricted area actually. So this dashed line here that I'm following is the restricted development area. And that's why you'll see that this trail here is outside of that. The original plan had this trail kind of going down into here, and then I think kind of looping back, but that's the trail we eliminated. So over here, this is the restricted development area. So that's why this trail is there because it isn't in the restricted area. And so it doesn't require that same level of, I guess, analysis at this stage that they're asking for.
That would be really cool if it did. The trails did go down to the restricted area.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a nice amenity, but it's one of those things that,
Can we suggest that they have that?
Yeah, I guess it's, I don't think the developer he wasn't opposed to doing that because it is an amenity for the development, but he was opposed to doing the level of analysis at this stage. And so he just decided, well, okay, forget that idea. It's not worth the headache, so to speak. But it's not to say it couldn't happen later, or if the Parks Board wants to recommend it, they we'll see how it shakes out, I guess. But if you could be more specific about, if there is in fact, so this trail, as I said, it kind of looped around here. It wasn't really intended to connect to anything, but it's not to say if there's some legitimate connection that could be considered. You know what I mean? Like this one, I could see it ends right there at the property line. I could see that connecting to something. I don't know where would owns that property. I mean, that property is outside the UGB. That doesn't, mean the trail has to stop. It's not the end of the world there, but so I guess maybe if you had more information to share about, is there a trail connection over here or something, and then it's a matter of figuring out when would that be developed, and say if it is there, I don't know if it is or not, but you can't just go like that. You're going to be going, winding your way around to get to from point A to point B. But just kind of the looping through the open space is more of this is just an amenity for the development, because all of this area is intended to be private.
Hey, Sarah, is it possible for you to share my screen?
Kathleen, you should be able to share your screen.
Oh, okay.
I'll stop sharing mine.
Okay.
Yeah, you just go down to the bottom where it says
Yep,
share screen.
hit share screen. Okay.
While you're doing that, Kathleen, let me clarify. Do you have a motion on the table?
I was starting to make a motion, yes, but I
Okay.
don't think I've clarified it.
Okay.
Here is the, can everybody see this?
Yes.
Okay, so the orange is the FSH, flood slope
Okay.
hazard overlay. And so the Parks Master Plan has, Parks and Trails Master Plan has a proposed trail. You can see the orange line there.
Yes.
So that's kind of where the trail was, this was kind of that planned loop around the town trail. And so that's, I kind of recalled that being the case, and it was on, over the slope there for the most part. And so that's kind of where I was leaning towards trying to incorporate that trail into this development in a way that would be open to the public.
And I think maybe the motion you're looking for, Kathleen, is that something along the lines of moving to support or allow the development to move forward with certain understandings, one of which is that a mutually agreed upon pedestrian access easement be identified at the time of the plat filing to allow for future trail cooperation with the city's trail master plan. Something along that line.
Can we ask for a variance so that they don't have to go through the rigmarole to have that trail go through and follow what's right there on the master plan?
Can they ask for a variance?
Yes.
I don't know.
Kathleen, can you zoom in a little bit on that?
Yes,
Tracy, without having to jump through all those hoops, is there a way to, there can be a variance for that?
To what?
To have that trail go down and into that area that you said is a pain in the butt to get a trail through?
Well, I mean, I think it would just be, so before I answer that, let me just kind of look at the trail a little bit. So, you know, you can't see my pointer, but so I'm looking at the area that's white with the orange and the trail that's kind of starting there, down, you know, down below at the kind of east end. So that is already there, except our trail kind of comes into the yellow versus going outside the property boundaries.
yeah,
And then once you get over to the other larger orange area, our trail kind of starts about where your hand is, maybe a little bit further to the left, the other way, and then goes along that, you know, edge of that
yeah, around
orange.
here.
So it's kind of
Yeah.
similar to that. That the alignment you're showing is probably further down the hill
Yep,
we're showing.
yeah,
And then it crosses through basically people's houses when it gets into the yellow there.
over here.
Yeah, over there.
Yeah,
So
yeah. And this is
then,
conceptual.
right.
Yeah.
And then it comes up that drainage, that big
Over
orange
here,
finger
this
there.
thing,
It
yeah,
comes up that
right.
orange finger. And then it, you know, then it kind of goes through the
Development again,
development
yeah.
again. I mean, in some sense, you know, it's this, because of this trail is being, you know, I guess, I mean, the desire, and I agree, the desire is to have something a little bit different than a sidewalk. You know, the parts that go through the yellow essentially will be a sidewalk. And yeah, I guess I'm just kind of going around. It's similar, but it's probably not as comprehensive as this plan. You know, I think I saw this on the master plan, and where it kind of loops outside the UGB there. And I kind of
Yeah.
wondered about that, because that is, you know, to me, it'd be more assured to be connected if it just, you know, went from, I can't move it, but if you kind of shift things up a little bit from that trail we're proposing in that white area to on the street, to then hook up with that chunk in the big orange area and kind of go across there somehow or another. But the way you've shown it, yeah, it is conceptual, and it doesn't really take into account topography, because to get down there, you're going to go down quite a bit. Then you're going to have to go up. So that
Yeah.
section, kind of just a little bit from your hand there, it's going to be, it looks straight, but it's really steep up the hill there.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a little bit different than that, obviously. But
And that's fine. And
Yeah,
I
so I
like,
don't
Don,
know.
what you said about the, you know, I mean, there's two things I guess I'd like to pitch out there for a possible motion. And one is that we, you know, kind of come to some agreement where we have, you know, trails that may be accessible, something that's kind of a linkage trail that gets people down to this more public trail from this neighborhood, and then having, you know, this, and this is all conceptual, but having the planned public trail be open. And so that's one of those. And then the second thing is, I'm not being very articulate tonight, I'm sorry. The other thing is that, you know, I do agree that we should pitch it back to the planning staff to waive the requirements for the grading plan, revegetation plan, and all that, because that's not, I don't even think that's required of our roads and things, you know, at this stage of the game. So
no,
I don't think,
well, it's because those aren't in the restricted area. And so
oh,
they're kind of
well,
looking
yeah,
at that as a,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know, kind
But I
of
think
the
it's something that
essentially-
it's kind of a mutually agreed upon, alignment, and then, the vegetation plan and grading plan are something that, again, we can kind of show some typicals, but that's something, like you said, it's, full of blackberries. You're not going to go down there and figure all that out right now. That's to be done later. And I support having more relaxed requirements for this proposal. I guess I'm comfortable that can all be worked out. But I also like to have the trail alignment, the conceptual trail location and the links within the subdivision to the future trail, public trail, kind of conceptually located.
I guess one thing I would say is, as it's shown,
It
especially
doesn't have to
that,
be as shown. Yeah.
So, as it's shown, that area going across the large yellow there, it would require a redesign of the whole subdivision.
Yeah.
So
No,
that's
I
probably
think
not going to happen
yeah.
this stage. And so
I think we could probably even come up with a different alignment in there, just looking at stuff in between now and the 23rd. Tracy, I'd be willing to help kind of, develop an alignment along here that works for this development but works on the ground also.
Yeah, so the chunk that goes through the big orange, we have a kind of an alternative up on top a little bit more.
Mhm.
I don't know if they would be opposed to that, but again, how you connect it once you get into the subdivision is the
Yeah.
challenge. So,
Kathleen, let me ask you a question. And it's more of not really procedural, but more of a legality kind of question. You're going to be going on to city council. I don't know that it would necessarily be appropriate for you to work with Tracy directly if you have the potential of having to make decisions on this topic.
Good point.
Particular thing. I think that'd be definitely,
Yeah.
one could easily argue ex officio contact, and I think you'd have to recuse yourself.
Certainly, I agree.
So
I think Nancy could probably work with him on that, though.
yes, Nancy, on behalf of the
City.
on behalf of the Trails Master Plan.
Right.
So, Tracy, would you be amenable to having Nancy give you a call?
no, that's fine. Yeah. I would say that, so as we've shown that, if I can I go back to my plan, Kathleen?
Mm-hmm.
Or
I'm sorry.
the
Yeah.
other plan real quick.
Sorry, I didn't mean to be a wet blanket on you, Kathleen.
No, I'm so thankful you brought that up, Don.
Don-
I really appreciate it.
Michael had something to offer too.
Okay,
So,
Michael,
as you
I
have
was
that.
just,
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
if what Kathleen is saying is in the form of a motion, then I would second it.
okay, let's have Tracy finish up, and then let's revisit that motion.
So
That's
as
fine.
those trails are kind of burned into your eye, so it's kind of was showing something like this, kind of going out here,
Yes.
and maybe coming into the property here, and then kind of coming through here, and I think then looping back and then coming out along up through here, and then looping over kind of like that. This section, I think it's already proposed. It doesn't go like that, but I guess that's something to think about. This section, whether it's the reason it's here is because we wanted to keep it up on top. I don't think they would be opposed to coming here. The problem is, how do you get through this? You can't. That's why I was saying they have to be a redesign. So, this section, if there was connecting to something over here, I could see a future trail, coming like up to here and then through development or whatever, and then, back continuing on. But
What about that north arrow? That would be a good spot since it's a little narrow.
That's possible. I mean, that's a possibility too. And where does it go? But,
To
so
other undevelopable land, right? That's the dotted line is basically showing where the slope is.
yeah, well, it's the top of bank essentially. So all this goes downhill.
Yeah, it could
I
go
don't
from
know.
that arrow and then down and loop around back to where your natural reserve area slice is over on the left.
Possibly, yeah. Yeah, so
Tracy, is that in that little cul-de-sac thing, and see there's that easement there?
over here.
Yeah, now just go almost straight to the right there. Is that an easement? Is that something that then you could connect to some future, to the trail that's down below there? I mean, again, you've got slope to worry
Yeah, I
about.
mean, this is a private drive to
Yeah,
serve.
let's throw a flag lot back there.
Oh, that's to a flag lot. Got it.
Yeah,
Okay,
well,
never
it's
mind.
actually
Never
not a flag
mind.
lot.
Oh, got it. Yep,
This is
sorry.
a separate tract.
Never mind.
And this
Sorry.
is the lot right here.
Right.
Okay, so Tracy, right where your hand is now,
Yeah,
follow that property line, those property lines south or down from where your hand is.
this way.
Yeah. What if that became the trail alignment? Continue on. Continue on. Continue on. Okay, now link it up to that other trail, just to the bottom. Nope. Right there. What if what you just traced, what became a trail alignment, as a linkage between both ends of the development? So if we wanted to have that trail, that master plan, start at one end of the development and out the other end, what if that was the alignment to get us through most of it? Then we just got to figure out how to get to that little dead end trail you have there.
Yeah, I mean, I think the master plan really didn't have any connections in
No.
this area. It was
Well,
kind of going from here this way, kind
Yeah,
of staying up on the bluff more.
But if it followed that contour line, I thought that was a trail before, but
Yeah,
if it followed the contour line to the north of those tan houses there and then just wrapped around, that should be feasible.
and can you slide your picture
you're
up a little
saying
bit?
like this around through here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Can you slide your picture up a little bit?
I'll just zoom out a little bit.
Okay, so right where your hand is, slide it up a little bit higher for me, would you? Other way.
Oh.
Sorry.
Okay. All
Okay,
right.
stop. Okay, you see where the lower cul-de-sac is?
Yep.
To the left there of the cul-de-sac, as you enter the cul-de-sac on the left, it appears that there's some kind of a pedestrian,
Yeah,
right
right
there.
through here. Yeah.
What's that?
That's a trail.
That's
So
a trail.
yeah, we're proposing a trail from here, then the sidewalk, a trail out to here, kind of a viewpoint, and then there's a trail along here to here. And then, then to continue on, you would use the sidewalk. And, that's where I was kind of thinking if we're talking a point A to point B, kind of, hood to coast kind of thing, we'll say, this kind of accomplishes that in a
Right.
way. It'd be nice maybe to play around down in these blackberries a little bit more, but
From my perspective, if we needed trail linkage through there, if we needed a dedicated pedestrian access easement, I would say what you just traced, including little bits of sidewalk, would be like the minimum. But maybe instead of having it go through those sidewalks, that it continues along what I had you trace earlier, the back sides of those tan lots along the contour line.
Mhm.
I mean, like over here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it becomes our responsibility to get from your hand back to wherever our trail is.
Mm-hmm.
I think that maybe what we do is send a correspondence that says, look, here's our two concerns. One is having to accept the property somewhere down the line in any, in the next decade or two. And as one concern, and then the other concern is to make sure that we have a public access easement that works to link our regional trails together.
Yeah, I kind of want to use the word citywide. Regional kind of implies,
Citywide is fine.
spring water.
Citywide is fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess,
So my question, hang on, Tracy, my question for Kathleen and for Makota and for the rest of the group, words to that effect, would that satisfy your concerns?
Yes.
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Yes. Susan?
Yes.
And Makota, did I hear you say yes? Okay.
Yes.
And I see a thumb from Kathleen.
Mhm.
Okay. So when do we have to have that correspondence prepared, Sarah?
Unmute, Sarah.
Goes to the planning commission on the 3rd. I'm assuming they're gonna want that early next week.
Okay. So if somebody wants to put that into a formal motion and second it, I would be happy to prepare that communication also.
Don
Somebody
just
else?
be the best with putting stuff into words like that.
I'm sorry, what?
You seem to be the best at putting together stuff into words that are the least confusing and the most accurate.
Well, I would certainly entertain a motion that said what Don just said would be fine.
Well, I would make a motion that, that we, in our communication to the planning staff, that we identify the issues and concerns we have about inheriting the park and trail facilities out there that are privately owned, and that we try to have some sort of a
That trail connection?
a what?
A trail connection?
No, I mean, didn't you want something in writing about, like, more, not accepting or getting all that stuff back in the next, 10 years or something?
Yes.
Yeah, some sort of a documentation that kind of gets signed that we don't end up with that in the next 10 or 15 years. And then the second issue or opportunity here for the motion was to have Nancy work with Tracy, the developer, and just kind of identify a future public easement that is consistent or compatible with the master plan alignment, and also works for their development and has the linkages from their residences, streets and things like that to that trail development.
Perfect.
I second.
Sarah,
I'll
you want to
second
that
that.
motion back to us? I'm
What's
teasing
that?
you, Sarah. I'm teasing you, Sarah. Michael, was that a second?
Yes, it was.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table, made by Kathleen, seconded by Michael. Any discussion? Not hearing any, let's go for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Was that an opposed? I think that was an aye for yes. So motion carries.
Just a quick note, Tracy, do you want me to put together a Zoom meeting with Nancy so you can share screens and?
sure, that's fine.
And I'll go ahead and work on that communication for us.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thanks, Don. Hey, Don, is that for both motions, or do you want me to prepare the second one?
I think that was one motion, two parts.
Okay, thank you. Well, there's the Bull Run as well.
Well, which one?
There's the first development we talked about.
Right, that's a separate thing altogether.
Okay, so you're gonna do both of those.
I will do both of those.
Thank you.
I'll do a
Thank you.
draft on those.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay.
I had just noticed that, Sarah, you were thinking about trying to organize a visit for us to see the views, but now that we've come and done all this, does that mean that we will not make a visit out there?
The planning department didn't want to get into doing site visits. They don't even do them with the planning commission. I think Dawn went out and looked, but because it's private property, difficult to view it. I can continue to request it, and maybe that will change in the future.
I did go out. You can see the upper views fairly well, you know, on the left there between what is a View Lane or View Street and Highway 26. But everything behind Johnson RV and kind of down around that corner, you just can't see it all without having to walk across people's private property. I wasn't A, brave enough, or B, willing to take that risk of trespass. So I chose not to go out onto that property.
Yeah, I mean, my input on that would be, you know, you're on a review board, and as part of city business, you would have the right to review that since you're providing, you know, input, advisory input. So, you know, I think, you know, that entrance is now barricaded, so you're not able to drive down there. But if you parked at that barricade and walked down, I don't think there would be a problem with that.
Okay, I did see that. I just didn't want to take the chance of bumping into somebody with a shotgun.
You know, yeah, no, there is a house down there, and they get access through Johnson RV. But I mean, I've driven down there just when I was kind of getting familiar with the property, and you know, it's not like you're going to be going around the house or anything. You just want to get a better feel for it. And I believe it's totally in your right to do that as an advisory, just as the planning commission or city council, because this is now a public application.
And maybe my in the future would be to talk directly to like Tracy or the developer
Yeah,
if a site visit is requested.
probably a good idea
Yeah.
to put it that way.
But I would kind of push back a little bit with the planning folks, because I mean, there's so much benefit to actually seeing something on the ground. And I think a lot of the issues or concerns, or even the opportunities for win-win solutions, come from having that firsthand knowledge of the site. So yeah, I think that's important to do if we can.
Okay.
I do agree with you on that.
Oh, I got an applause from Susan, thanks.
I want to say, especially for PUDs, when it's, you know, they're trying to have something special going on.
Yeah. Sometimes it helps to look behind the curtain a little bit. All righty, moving along.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it. Anything else for me?
Thanks.
Or
I think we'll see you in
Thank you, Tracy.
December. Tracy will be back. Tracy will be back in December.
okay. All right.
Thanks.
Talk to you later.
Tickle Creek Village.
So long.
Oh, okay. Good. That's right. Looking forward to it.
Good.
And congratulations, Kathleen, actually.
Thank you very much.
All right. See you later.
You bet. Okay, so moving along, item number 7.1, master plan update. Sarah, what do you got for us?
I don't have much unless the TAC does. I know that there is an attempt to schedule a TAC meeting where there will be updates, but since the last meeting and this meeting, there hasn't been too much. So I just wanted to let you know it's coming. A TAC meeting is in the works, and by December, hopefully we'll have more of an update for you.
Very good. All righty then. I have nothing else. Does anybody have anything for the good of the order? I see a finger from Susan.
I sent that, I had thought maybe we could talk a little about that code of conduct thing.
Okay, why don't you go
And,
ahead?
I had
Sure,
shared with Sarah 2 letters from the Government Ethics Commission. And I was just disturbed that we're asked to sign this code of conduct. And then Lori Smallwood submitted a letter to the editor of the Sandy Post. I assume you read that, Kathleen. alleging
I didn't see it.
that you would have a great big conflict of interest if you got elected. And so I was hoping Sarah could share those those
I didn't get those until today, and I was in meetings all day.
right, but you have them now. I mean, I don't know. I don't have a way to share things, but basically the Government Ethics Commission had a similar case where I think a brother and a sister, one was employed, one was on council, and it was a reading. Anyway, my whole point was just that I didn't think that letter to the editor was appropriate because it didn't seem to represent the truth. And everybody keeps talking about, as commission or council members, we have to speak the truth and we have to be polite and this and that. And anyway, and I was asking a couple of people at the ribbon cutting today about whether they thought there was any conflict of interest. I know, Kathleen, you've said there wasn't, but that letter was published just the last edition before the election. And if it had some impact on people because they believed it, it just wouldn't have been right. And Lori did not say in her letter, she didn't say city council member or anything like that. It just, I feel, I haven't signed the code of conduct, and I feel kind of just, I'm sure it's a good idea for everybody to do all those things. And I was looking back on stuff. I think when I think of all the years and stuff, I think training about, not necessarily about code of conduct, but training for board members about the basic functioning of city. It's taken so many years trying to figure out about, how things work. Anyway, so I just wanted to share that basically, I guess. And I'm not reapplying to be on the board. I'm just tired, and I'm put off, by the way the council
Sorry to
seems
hear
to be
that.
treating us, and just stuff like that. So, and that just seemed like one more weird thing. And I don't know why Lori's not here. She's not here tonight. And I don't know who will be the representative to the park board commission, but it won't matter since I'm not here, except I can come and watch you guys if I want to, I guess. I do really enjoy being in the garden. And, like Don was saying, if there's some kind of a little, Girl Scout leader role I can play there at the garden, that might be nice. But anyway, I'm glad that election is over anyway. And
I think it's quite hypocritical if you ask me. And I think it's ridiculous to have a code of conduct that doesn't apply to not only boards and commissions, but employees as well as elected officials. And the wording in it is just so, it can be taken any number of ways. And it depends on who's interpreting it and for what reasons and what angles. And so I think the council should readdress that and redraw it or do something with it, because as it is, and with the way it doesn't encompass the whole city, as with employees and elected officials, it's kind of just doesn't make any sense.
well, I guess, I felt like, especially the way it came about, it's like these things are going on and people are very upset. And then the council passes this thing and tries to jam something down our throat. It just seemed like it wasn't, the process didn't seem the way it should have been.
On the surface, it's basically trying to tie anybody that knows anything about city business that's going on is on a board or commission. They see the inner workings, and it's meant to tie the hands of those people from calling out anything that they see that's might be unscrupulous or an issue.
Maybe. I'm sure that there's a lot possibility of real criminal kinds of things going on, if people weren't having to declare true conflicts of interest and stuff like that. But
I think it's one thing to go on social media and say, present yourself with your title, within the city workings, and say, this is, how I feel with this title. It's another to go on as a personal private citizen. And I also think it goes against First Amendment rights, to be quite honest with you.
so are you saying that Lori has a right to say whatever she wanted in the Sandy Post, even though she's a city council member?
Well, I think if she's going to present the code of conduct to other people that are within the city structure and then do that, yeah, it's hypocritical.
Hypocritical. Okay, so
Do I think there should be a code of conduct? Personally, no, because again, I think it infringes on First Amendment rights. Now, using your title to present something on social media or in the public or on the news, that's a different story. But if you're presenting it as a private citizen, as a resident, and not using your title, I think it's all fair game.
well, I mean, in the post, she did not publicly say I am on city council or anything like that. So in a way, it sounds like you're saying that fine, she's just acting like a private
Well,
citizen.
no, I'm saying it's
She can
hypocritical.
say
because
anything
she's
she wants,
expecting-
even if it's not true.
No,
And I
I'm
don't
saying
think
it's
it was true,
hypocritical.
and that's what I object to.
No,
She's telling
I
us
agree.
we have to say things only if they are true, and sometimes it's very hard to figure out what the heck is true, with city regulations and all that.
No, I agree with you. I'm just saying it's hypocritical. If she's going to hold us to, it's a double standard is what's going on. And that's
Well, I agree with
ridiculous. I think it's ridiculous. I think all the residents should know about it. And I'm not sure why it's not well known.
Does
Kathleen,
anybody
did you
else
see your
have-
hand go up? No?
Yeah, I think what's important for me, and I think important for all boards, is that when you're on a board like this, obviously we treat everybody with respect, we listen to each other. We may disagree, but we respectfully agree and agree to disagree. And when we go out into the community, especially when we're talking about anything to do with parks, I'm very clear about, if we all decided that, that a particular development or a particular decision that we made about parks was the best thing since sliced bread, but I personally thought it was horrendous and I voted no on it, my job as a Parks Board member is to represent that board view and not my personal view, because we voted on it. Everybody, the consensus was that it's a great idea. And so that's my job, is to represent that position as a Parks Board member, regardless of what I personally feel about it. That's very important to me. And I think that, signing something like that is totally appropriate. It gets a little bit harder when you go outside the scope of parks and things like that, and other issues facing the city, whether it be, murals or planning, development planning and things like that. That's where, again, I think it's important for all of us to be professional and involved, and not be as honest as we can. I think what's difficult for all of us is what's true for me may not be true for somebody. And I think this, the national politics that we have is just, rings true on this. There is truth, but how we see truth is very different. And so, I've been accused of being a liar and wanting to bring a Walmart to Sandy and all those kind of ugly things in city council meetings. And it was really, kind of surprising, but on the other hand, I've been very vocal on social media about decisions that the council or the planning commission were making about things that I disagreed with or didn't feel like they were in the best interests of city residents, and things that I guess one of the things that really hits home is things that don't smell right and that appear to be conflicts of interest, those are the things that I take a special exception to. And again, that's in the eyes of the beholder. What smells bad to me may not smell and does not smell, in fact, to other people on other boards and commissions. And I got to accept that. I don't have to like it, but I have to accept that. I have to be, somewhat respectful of that, but that doesn't mean I have to, that I should have to just completely shut my mouth about it. And how do you say that in a way that is, respectful, but also pointing out that, for me, this is a conflict of interest, or this is doesn't smell right. This doesn't pass a smell test. So those are, I think, the difficult things. It's exactly like you said, Susan. I called the ethics commission as soon as I saw that letter and talked to them, and they said that it, in situations where, of course, if we were talking about compensation for, Mike Walker, or anything like that, of course I would already recuse myself. But of course that's where it gets fuzzy. But in situations that aren't related to direct compensation to your relative, then it's not a conflict of interest. And they said that they would be willing to work with us once I got elected, which now I have been elected, and I'm sure they'll continue to weigh in. I'm sure the council lawyer will weigh in on the whole thing and give his advice. And of course, I have no intention of being, of having any kind of conflict of interest or something like that. I would recuse myself if there was, but I would also, but it was obviously her opinion. And again, sometimes our opinions, they're facts for us. And so I don't want to say that she can't say that, but on the same, like you said, on the same situation, I feel it is kind of two-faced to kind of say that that was all truth and everything else, but anything that we've said, it was, it wasn't truthful for me. So, I respect and, support her ability to say that if she wants, but I disagree with it. And, and if I said the same thing, I wouldn't want to be taken off, removed from the board because somebody thought it was truthful. So I think what's the truth? I think it's helpful to have discussions about this when there's disagreement about what we think is the truth. I don't know that it's necessarily, called, your basis to fire somebody off of a board over a disagreement like that. So I'm concerned about, how we stay respectful and professional, but also have the ability to disagree or to call out things that we find to be, not right. We gotta have to figure that out.
That this is, and disenfranchised with our current council, I guess, that this is the result of the Bailey Meadows incident. That someone else on another commission is still sitting there after everything that went down. And this is the end result, a code of conduct thing for us. Doesn't make any sense.
I guess we all just have to go to council meetings and express ourselves down the road. Keep participating. Anyway, thank you. Sorry to keep you past 9.
That's okay. It's important to talk about these things. Anything else for the good of the order?
Well, I was going to say on the Parks and Trails Master Plan. Oh, I know, Sarah. I think I went on this. I don't know if it's still the case, but I went on the city website and it allowed me to kind of start going through the survey, and then I got to all the way to the end, and it said, you can't, when you hit submit, it wouldn't let you take it. And so
Yeah.
whatever the link.
I'll take it down tomorrow. I left it up a little past the deadline thinking people might slide in there, but I think they've ended it at the consultant's end, so.
Yep, they did. Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else? Going once, going twice. Sold. We will see you all in December.
When is it going to be in December, by the way?
Second Wednesday.
Okay, the 9th. All right.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you,
Thank
guys.
you.
Thank you. Meeting adjourned. And Sarah, I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Thanks, Don.
Bye. Good night.
Good night.